This week's episode is brought to you by Norm Rasmussen and Brian Davis. Thank you, Norm Rasmussen and Brian Davis. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that keeps our AI-controlled drone army sweeping vast swaths of ocean, land, and sky to keep a close eye on the unfolding UFO invasion in your hometown, so you can be prepared when the flying pyramids eventually land in your parking spot. If you'd like to protect your parking spot with unmanned surveillance technology or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you instant access to our entire library of extended episodes, now conveniently available with Spotify integration, but also I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our Big Baphomet cover art sent to you at no additional cost. And more than that, the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can tell us everything your crazy aunt knows about the reptilian invasion force without the threat of public humiliation. On this week's episode, we discuss the curious details surrounding Tiffany Gomas, the internet's latest meme queen heartthrob, who declared most emphatically while pointing at an unknown passenger aboard the flight, "That motherfucker is not real," which has left everyone with a lot of questions we hope to begin answering as events unfold. In fact, since editing the episode, revelations have been made public that Tiffany's marketing company is related to the Department of Defense and Army Recruitment Center, adding another layer of intrigue and mystery to the situation. We will update as the situation continues. Afterwards, we then discuss other cases where non-human intelligences have taken disguise as humans and severely alarmed the people they're interacting with, specifically the fabled Men in Black, who are well known for visiting UFO researchers and abductees. Then we tie it all together in a discussion about the facts regarding the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 and review the recently rediscovered and leaked footage of the flight's unbelievable interaction with UFOs that is guaranteed to blow your mind. In the extended version of the show, we relax a bit further into our big comfy chairs to discuss our personal interactions with Men in Black type characters and some spooky, real-life paranormal encounters sent in by our incredible listener community. We had quite a bit of fun compiling the sections for this episode, so thank you and enjoy the show. I have a serious question.
Shoot.
Why do aliens always spill their tea? Because they have flying saucers.
Yeah, but they also have anti-gravitational technology, so that would not be applicable.
How do aliens organize a party? They plan it.
Come on, dude.
What is an alien's favorite part of a computer? The space bar! Hello everybody and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we do more than just investigate the magnetic and gravitational anomalies on the moon while speculating on the extraterrestrial construction companies operating there without clothing since time immemorial. Nay, we investigate alien and paranormal anomalies right here on Earth, from both mainstream media, the internet, and of course, stories submitted by listeners of this show, because this week we're discussing UFOs, the Men in Black, and listener encounters with the paranormal. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the K9 Corgi of Cairbanog, Mari Sama.
Howdy, y'all.
The mysterious missionary, Malachor 5.
What's up?
And the didactic dream damsel, Heka Astra.
Hello.
As we're still preparing our next episode about the tarot, specifically for the Justice card of the Major Arcana, I decided it would be a good time to discuss some current events which are blowing up all over the interwebs, specifically the ones related to the paranormal and otherworldly variety. Anyone who's been online lately has probably seen that lady who had a meltdown on an American Airlines flight, who has since become a world-famous meme when she declared famously, "That motherfucker is not real," or TMFINR for short. Has anyone seen this lady or the memes?
Oh yeah, First of all, I don't give a shit that people are stalking her or that it was over AirPods or that she has like a designer bag. I don't care that she lives in a $2.1 million mansion with 4 bedrooms and a pool. I don't care about any of that. I want to know what does she mean by calling that motherfucker not real? Like, what is the concept of calling someone not real? What does that entail? Like, what was going through her head? And I have found zero, any kind of like substantial reading or evidence or any context to that. And I'm angry about it.
Didn't she say something about if you want to stay on this plane and die, like...
And you can sit on this plane and you can fucking die with them or not. I'm not going to.
No one has asked her specifically what she meant by that, nor have they even identified the man who was allegedly not real.
And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, is because none of the stories explaining it make a damn bit of sense.
It's a tulpa. That's what she saw.
People are speculating lots of stuff like drugs or psychosis.
She did seem a bit tipsy, but I have sympathy for that. Just because you're a little tipsy doesn't mean you can't see an alien or a black-eyed kid or whatever. So to get into it, our story begins on July 2nd, 2023, inside an American Airlines flight just prior to takeoff from Dallas, Texas to Orlando, Florida, when 38-year-old Tiffany Gomas was caught on video having a spectacular meltdown that was soon to go viral online. In the video shot by a passenger on board, Tiffany, her face flushed with exasperation, can be seen mid-rant walking swiftly through the crowded aisles toward the front, exclaiming loudly her intention of getting the off the plane right now. She pauses and turns around while explaining frantically, voice choked with tears and wild conviction that she is doing so, believe it or not believe it, because that motherfucker is not real.
I'm telling you, I'm getting the fuck off, and there's a reason why I'm getting the fuck off, and everyone can either believe it or they cannot believe it. I don't give 2 fucks, but I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real.
As she gestures towards an unseen passenger off frame. After the camera whips towards the back, showing only a sea of baffled, incredulous faces staring back at her, Tiffany, voice pitched at Minnie Mouse levels, warns cryptically that they can sit there on the plane and die with them before valiantly dismissing herself and continuing her jaunt towards the exit. With the news cycle void of any related airline disasters and lacking any details to contextualize the incident, the expected outpouring of unhinged mockery was balanced and even overwhelmed by a steady stream of sympathy, ardent curiosity, and even admiration commingled with no small portion of viewers claiming her proudly as their waifu. Naturally, most people were curious who or what exactly Tiffany had seen, with speculation and satire proliferating like wildfire. What exactly had she seen that would cause such ardent consternation? Mainstream reporting on the incident only proved to muddy waters further, with a number of sources claiming various reasons, all of which are entirely unsatisfying. One popular narrative claimed that Tiffany had first become irate due to a stolen pair of AirPods, while others an inflammatory argument between herself and family members. Some sources even claimed, contrary to what everyone had seen, that Tiffany was refusing to leave the plane and ardently demanding to be let back on, despite footage circulating of the flight attendant fruitlessly attempting to convince her to grab her carry-on luggage prior to leaving. Later, body cam footage of the police sent to escort her out of the terminal shows Tiffany staring at the aircraft through the windows in what looks to be shock and disbelief, talking to someone on the phone who asks her where her suitcase is, before she replies in a drone-like tone, "It's on that flight." Moments later, she can be seen tearfully begging one of the attendants, "Do not let that flight leave." She never once mentions her luggage, which seems to indicate genuine concern. Well, it's unclear if her outburst was intentional and performative in an attempt to inconvenience someone else on the flight. After all, the flight had to be unboarded for TSA to redo their standard pre-flight security check, which cost passengers a 5-hour delayed departure. Many are still convinced Tiffany saw something outside of consensus reality, which is, as a matter of course, being obscured from the public with some lame story about AirPods. And of course, while stolen AirPods and family bickering is an obvious possibility, the incident struck a chord with countless onlookers, and for good reason. After all, we live in a world up to its neck in uncertainty and well-founded paranoia about mainstream narratives which thrive on unexamined cognitive dissonance and thinly veiled deceptions about everything from politics to foreign wars to healthcare to ideas of identity, race, and even the nature of reality itself. For example, between thirsty cries to identify Tiffany by name, news poured in from congressional hearings with whistleblower David Grush, who, having been a representative of the National Reconnaissance Office to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, interviewed numerous government and military personnel who corroborated Pentagon involvement in the business of reverse engineering UFOs, and even possessing no less than actual alien corpses retrieved from crash sites. So my point is that even if we don't necessarily believe her, we have some empathy for her, perhaps like an icon that perfectly sums up the vibe we're currently living through. Despite such claims being difficult to swallow by the mainstream, many suspect, and with good reason, that this is merely the tip of the iceberg. After all, Tiffany Gomas would not be the first person to have witnessed what can only be described as something non-human disguised as one. Since 1947, UFO witnesses have frequently claimed to be visited shortly after their otherworldly encounter by equally otherworldly beings which have come to be known as Men in Black, which are significantly stranger than they are portrayed in the popular 90s era franchise.
The good guys dress in black, remember that, just in case we ever face to face and make contact.
Have y'all heard about these people?
Yeah, I was hearing about that they're like a cheap copy of a human. I think that's where they get Agent Smith, I think, from The Matrix.
Oh, he would absolutely count as one.
Yeah, they're agents. They're not people. They're not individuals.
Yeah, that's a really good archetypal depiction of what we're talking about here. They're highly trained in various like combat styles, perhaps even alien combat styles that you're just like scared. They have like a presence kind of ability to just be daunting or maybe even alluring to people through some psychic means, perhaps, and they use that knowledge in combat. There's legends of Men in Black just being like supernaturally strong and capable.
Or just incredibly socially awkward with no concept as to like normal human interactions or questions and weird body features.
So I did a little bit of digging to figure out where the whole Men in Black phenomena started. And of course, it, like most other things in the UFO world, seemed to pop up around 1947. So for the witches and wizards, like right after Aleister Crowley dies. In said year, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a veteran pilot and successful businessman, claims to have seen 9 boomerang or wedge-shaped objects flying and doing maneuvers at tremendous speed entirely uncharacteristic of human technology while piloting his own private aircraft in the middle of the afternoon on June 24th in the vicinity of Mount Rainier. It's still not uncommon for UFO enthusiasts to visit Mount Rainier and chant and meditate and wave crystals in hopes that they'll show up.
It's true.
Kenneth Arnold would later describe his sighting to a columnist, Nolan Skiff of the East Oregonian, a local newspaper, saying the objects flew like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. These statements were picked up by the Associated Press, and quickly a game of telephone began, which transformed Kenneth Arnold saying the boomerang-like objects flew like saucers skipping along the water into saucer-like objects, and eventually flying saucers, which cemented this terminology into the popular lexicon from that point forward. So if you want to be a purist, you should really be talking about flying boomerangs. Of course, as we know now, UFOs come in all shapes and flavors, like Tic Tac.
The cigar.
For some reason, those really spook me out. Like, if I saw a giant cylindrical craft like that, it would genuinely spook me out. It's just weird.
There's also spheroids that float on their own. There's the triangular ones, which I'm pretty sure are man-made. And then there's the ones that float in the clouds and they have cloaking technology. Some of them are either giant spheres or oblong objects. A lot of times there's cubes.
Yeah, black cube.
Those things are so scary.
Why is it the triangular ones and the cube ones sound the most intimidating?
Well, the cubes are Borg.
Definitely.
Ugh.
Space communists. Naturally, Arnold became a celebrity overnight and soon became swamped with letters and phone calls with people who had also witnessed strange UFO phenomena. During this time, a Raymond Palmer, editor of the fringe sci-fi magazine Amazing Stories, sent Arnold 200 buckaroos to investigate the claims of a certain Harold Dahl. Harold Dahl would say,
On June 21st, 1947, in the afternoon about 2 o'clock, I was patrolling the East Bay of Maury Island. I, as captain, was steering my patrol boat close to the shore of a bay on Maury Island. On board were 2 crewmen, my 15-year-old son and his dog. As I looked up from the wheel on my boat, I noticed 6 very large donut-shaped aircraft. Oh, toroids.
donuts. Dahl continued by saying one of the objects, quote,
began spewing forth what seemed like thousands of newspapers from somewhere on the inside of its center. These newspapers, which turned out to be a white type of very lightweight material, fluttered to the earth.
Dahl reported that a substance resembling lava rock also fell onto their boat, breaking a worker's arm and killing the dog.
Oh, these bastards gotta die now. The aliens, I mean.
What would John Wick do?
Exactly.
Were they dumping the trash out of the wormhole or something?
Well, not to spoil Ingo Swan's book, Penetration, he talks about being shown a pyramidal UFO that was sucking water out of a waterfall. So it's not uncommon entirely that UFOs are sucking up or projecting material from their surroundings for some unknown reason.
Even in the Tic Tac incident, the pilots were saying, it was a clear day, water was blue, but there was a white water spot. And this Tic Tac was floating over it, and we engaged it, and then it moved away, and the white spot was no longer on the water. Like the white water wasn't there anymore,
Oh, it was like moving something in the water.
It was doing something to the water. Yeah, it was making like a ruckus, so to speak, and the water on the top was turning white, while the rest of the ocean was just clear blue.
Oh, yeah, that's like the tractor beams pull stuff in.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what they're doing. Nobody's really sure. Now, as an addendum to this incident, Dahl claimed to have been visited the next morning by a man dressed in all black, driving a brand new black Buick that, besides refusing to identify himself or who he was working for, told him that he knew about the incident, and if Dahl ever told his story to anyone, there would be dire consequences. Likewise, Dahl was pretty worried about telling his story to anybody, and as we'll see, whenever questioned by authorities, he was quick to recant and say he had made it all up, but we'll get there. Now, despite these warnings, Dahl did tell his superior, Fred Chrisman, who corroborated that he also had seen a mysterious donut-shaped craft and submitted to Arnold a sample of the strange material said to have been ejected by them. For whatever reason, Arnold was, well, unimpressed and evaluated the material was of mundane origin and a bit inconsistent with Dahl's story. Nonetheless, he contacted the Air Force, which dispatched 2 officers to review the samples and conduct their own interviews. Now, fearing the mysterious threat made by the man in black, Dahl happily signed a statement saying the entire incident was a hoax that he just made up. But in private, he was quick to say that it was actually true. He just was afraid of the man in black. So this pretty much establishes the Men in Black as a potential threat. Somebody that scares you straight, basically, and makes you not want to talk about what you know. Then tragedy struck. On the way back to California, those 2 officers that came from the Air Force, they died when their B-25 Mitchell mysteriously crashed.
Oh man. Kind of sucks when you're associated with anybody with the military or in the government. Like, you just die mysteriously, and they're like, yeah, that's the story.
He died collecting UFO accounts. So naturally, the military/government was pissed, but they ultimately decided that they were not going to prosecute or have any sort of punishment for Dahl because they thought it was just a hoax that got out of control, and it really wasn't his fault that the airplane crashed, so they decided to just not follow up with it. And then that feeds the legend of this story. In the mid-1950s, ufologist Albert K. Bender also claimed he was visited by men in dark suits who threatened and warned him to discontinue his investigation of UFOs. While Bender believed they were servants of the government, another ufologist, John Keel, claimed his encounters with the Men in Black were, quote, demonic supernaturals with, quote, dark skin and exotic facial features. You know, the types of people that the US government didn't employ back in those days. They're very inclusive now, I hear.
Which is scarier.
Yeah, you could have a furry Man in Black.
Oh my god.
You wouldn't even know.
It would be a
furry.
black wolf or a dragon or something.
Dog man in black.
It'd be like a dragon with googly eyes.
Butt plug.
Come on, man, that hurts. Literally.
You just show him the anomalous material UFO drop and it goes right up the butt.
Yep, it's an extra pocket.
He's a marsupial furry. A butt marsupial. This is not unusual of Men in Black sightings. What first appear to be super secret agents dispatched by elements of the government or military or somebody soon begin to seem like something entirely supernatural themselves, often displaying non-human qualities and possessing knowledge of incidents and details only the witness could possibly know about.
I mean, if they were extra dimensional, it would be possible that they could read everybody's thoughts at the same time and see inside walls and buildings and stuff. That's not out of the question.
Based on these accounts, it's actually not out of the question. It almost seems like if you were flying a giant donut and one of these monkey people sees you, you have to like dial the number and be like, hey man, they just saw me. Can you like dispatch the dudes to tell them to not talk about me? And then you're given some sort of alien fine that you have to pay and appear in alien court, and you get a point on your record, and it's probably a big mess.
Probably demote you to co-pilot of the UFO.
So are Men in Black like rodeo clowns, but for humans?
Yes. This brings us to maybe my favorite story about Men in Black, although I'm still sifting through them. They're somewhat difficult to find, but a beloved subject of podcasts, go figure. So to get into it, perhaps the most iconic of these incidents involves Dr. Herbert Hopkins, a renowned and successful allergist who had been utilizing one of his other talents of hypnosis and doing regression therapy with a certain David Stevens, who, during his therapy, was recounting abduction by horrifying mushroom-headed beings. While sitting at home one night on September 11th, 1976, Dr. Hopkins received a phone call from somebody claiming to be the vice president of the New Jersey UFO Research Organization, calling from a phone booth and asking if the doctor was alone. He furthermore wished to be permitted to come visit and discuss some of his findings. Yeah, so you want to talk about some UFOs? I'll be right there. Excited to collaborate, Dr. Hopkins agreed and went to turn on his porch light so his visitor would know which door to approach. It was a big house. But the moment he did so, an impeccably dressed man in a black suit with gray gloves and a large brimmed hat was already ascending his porch and quickly asked to come inside. Stunned and with his mind still reeling by the man in black, he obliged the request and invited him inside. However, once the man in black's hat came off, he noticed quickly there was something very strange about this guest. His skin had a sickly pallor and was almost entirely white in color, maybe even a little translucent. He was missing any sign of hair, like entirely bald, lacking eyebrows or eyelashes, and his lips were ruby red as if he were wearing lipstick. It is also said his ears were too tiny and his nose was too small for his stature. Both sat a little too low on his head, but nonetheless, Dr. Hopkins, trying to be a good host, invited him to the living room where they sat down and began to talk. The two sat across from each other in the living room while the strange man asked Dr. Hopkins numerous questions about his hypnotic regression sessions, betraying knowledge of details that only the doctor and his clients could possibly know. Each time Dr. Hopkins responded, the strange man in black replied robotically with,
"Yes, that's the way I understand it."
As if that were not strange enough, the man in black spoke with a strange inflection and slurred his speech, almost as if he were drinking or not possessed of the English language. At one point, the man in black mistakenly rubbed his lips with his gray gloved hands, smearing some of the red on his lips, which left Dr. Hopkins with the impression that his guest possessed no lips at all below said ruby red lipstick. At this point, Dr. Hopkins was strongly beginning to suspect that this motherfucker was not real.
There we go. Finally, an explanation.
But things only got weirder from there. Near the end of their conversation, the strange man pointed to the doctor's pants while casually making the observation that he had 2 coins inside, asking the doctor to produce one of them. Although he was a bit shocked, after pulling out one of the pennies, his guest demanded,
"Watch the coin."
At first, Dr. Hopkins observed the coin begin to change from a coppery color to a silvery color like a dime or a quarter. Then it began to shift into blue before turning blurry and finally disappearing entirely.
"No one will ever see that coin on this plane ever again,"
the mysterious guest declared. Right? Like, I can just make stuff disappear. Turning the conversation to Betty and Barney Hill, mainstream history's first documented UFO abduction case from 1961, which famously involved hypnotic regression as well, the guest asked,
"Do you know what happened to Barney Hill?"
"No, I don't," replied Hopkins. "Except that he died."
"Do you know what he died from?"
asked the stranger. "A heart attack, maybe?"
"No, that's not entirely accurate. He died because he knew too much,"
replied the stranger, kind of threatening. Rising slowly, The stranger declared with slurred speech,
"My energy's running low. Must go now. Goodbye."
Stunned again, Dr. Hopkins got up to follow his guest, but when he arrived at the door, the patio and parking lot was bathed in a bright blue light, and the stranger was nowhere to be seen. So when a man in black says he could disappear you, it might be literal. And even though it seems like it took some of his energy, depending on how much, Funyuns they ate that day, they might be able to disappear something even bigger, like your heart or your car or your airplane or your Game Boy, God forbid. Of course, this is just one of many accounts of the now well-known Men in Black. Well, at first, it may seem unlikely that Tiffany Gomas saw one of these otherworldly, perhaps extraterrestrial agents because, as far as we know, they tend to harass and intimidate UFO researchers and abductees, although it's not entirely implausible. According to one of our source texts for the last episode, Penetration by Ingo Swann, SRI's best remote viewing subject, aliens do walk among us disguised as humans, and if Ingo's tales are to be believed, they are monitored as a serious threat by shadowy, top-secret organizations with our best interest in mind.
Yeah, right.
Now, in his account that we spoke of last week, he plays with the idea that the two agents that came to collect him for his remote viewing sessions were alien, but upon closer inspection, he began to feel that maybe they were just under the same entrainment, hypnotic training, essentially. Like, they had lips. They were like handsome humans. They were just maybe a little extra human because of their secret agent training. He got the impression that they could like kill you with a pencil, that kind of thing, you know? Now, according to Ingo's memoirs, he ran into a particularly alluring and attractive woman at an LA grocery store whom his ultra-secret contacts were quick to admonish and question him for inadvertently interacting with. Like, he was in the grocery store, saw some hottie, but then he noticed the two twins, which had, like, contacted him earlier, and he was like, uh-oh. Stranger still, when he went to talk to his friend about it, like, did you notice anything weird about that woman? His friend is like, oh yeah, she's an alien. We got a lot of those in Los Angeles. Perhaps Tiffany was witness to one of these aliens in a thinly veiled disguise prior to demanding exit off the plane. Stranger still, perhaps Tiffany herself is the alien and was spooked by the presence of a human agent sent to monitor her. After all, many casual observers online mention that Tiffany appears quite different in her recently released apology video and even less recognizable in other photos published by the media, supposedly portraying her in daily life. Well, it's probably just indicative of Tiffany's skill with makeup. Some denizens of the internet are convinced the real Tiffany from the video is still a mystery, and actors have been hired to cover up what really happened to her, or just to prevent her from telling her story. Perhaps the Tiffany from the original video was the true threat to the flight, and the person that spooked her was acting to protect the other passengers from an otherworldly threat, which at first may seem far-fetched until we consider another story currently blasting its way through cyberspace, the mysterious disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370. Have y'all heard about this? This is like a while ago now.
Oh yeah, I knew about it.
I'm happy I didn't learn anything about it when it was still fresh in the news because I had a bit of a good time figuring out all the crazy details about it for this episode. So while most people have heard of the mysteriously missing Malaysian Airlines flight, they may not be privy to the strange details surrounding the incident. Prior to researching for this episode, I would be included in that group who had absolutely no idea. To summarize, the Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 first went missing all the way back in 2014 during the early hours of March 8th, particularly ancient history in terms of the mainstream news cycle. However, two leaked videos have surfaced which appear to show something absolutely and totally mind-blowing happening to the aircraft, which have the internet currently in the frenzy. Before discussing what these videos show, it is worth recounting the strange details of the incident which led up to it. In many ways, the things we do know are just as strange as these two videos, although not quite. At some point, we're gonna have to pause and show you these videos if you haven't seen them yet. They're really cool. As the story goes, on March 8th at 12:41 a.m., so the middle of the night, 227 passengers and 12 crew members of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 are preparing to take off with Captain Zahari Shah and First Officer Farik Hamid at the helm for a 6-hour flight from Kuala Lumpur International Airport located in Sepang, Malaysia to Beijing, China. The flight takes off without anything remarkable happening, and at 1:01 a.m., the aircraft reaches a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The fastest seatbelt light is turned off and snacks begin to to be served. What's the deal with the peanuts? On the ground, radar stations pick up the flight signal as normal. In a short while, MH370 will leave Malaysian airspace and cross into Vietnamese airspace. At 1:07 a.m., an hour and a half before the flight first goes missing, the Malaysian flight tower receives data from Flight 370's Aircraft Communication Addressing and Recording System, or ACAR for short, which is a communications array that transmits data about the plane and the status of several important systems on board. You know, it can like show you air pressure and how much gas is left in the plane, and
it's like a detailed ping.
Yeah, it has like all the information you would need to know to figure out what's going on board in like close detail. Now, this would be the last time ACARS communicates with traffic control, but it would take another half hour before anyone on the ground realizes this system has been turned off from inside the cockpit. This seems to suggest that whoever turned it off did so with the intention of taking the flight off course and didn't want anybody to notice right away. By turning the ACARS off, ground radar would soon stop receiving telemetry from the plane. Still, prior to anyone noticing anything was wrong, Malaysian traffic controllers received a message from the cockpit of Flight 370 from the headset of Farik Hamid, the first officer, who didn't sound distressed or even aware anything was wrong, ending his message with a customary pleasantry, "good night," which often indicates, as it did in this case, the flight is entering a different communications network. Flight controllers in Malaysia think nothing of it as they hear it all the time. It's basically what you say when you're like, "Okay, communication network, I'm going over to the other network now. Good night."
That makes sense.
It's like, yeah, you're not going to be hearing from me after this. I'm going to go switch over to the other airspace. In this case, however, it would be the last time anybody ever heard from the crew aboard Flight 370. At 1:21 a.m., just as the flight crosses into Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea, somebody in the cockpit flips off the transponder, which constantly pings radar towers with the flight identification, speed, altitude, and heading of the plane. Apparently, turning off this system turns the aircraft into an unknown blip on the radar and is somewhat more difficult to turn off than the ACARS system.
So unless somebody was like at the air traffic control panel that is showing all this flight data, that would have just turned into like a regular dot with no name. And unless somebody was actively like following it, and only that one, they would have been able to track it with accuracy at this time. But that's a very impossible task to do. And I don't think anybody ever came forward like, yeah, I was looking at it the whole time.
Wouldn't that turn it from like an accepted flight to like a red flag to be looked into? Like, that seems a little strange to me.
It does, and there's a bit of a disconnect. So it's like they don't notice that Flight 370 is missing, and then suddenly there's like, a blip. They're not quite sure what it is. And so, while we don't know why, at this point, the data suggests that the cockpit is compromised and something very peculiar is happening on purpose aboard Flight 370. Like, there's no way to misinterpret that. Like, those things don't just get turned off on accident. The pilot or somebody in the cockpit had to turn off both of those systems. So like, something is amiss. And the fact that it happened exactly between those two airspaces, it makes it easy to double down on the idea that it was on purpose. Somebody's doing something deceptive.
I'm just saying, like, isn't it heady? Like, countries don't usually like unknown incoming blips from one country into another in their airspaces. So it kind of seems like it's something you wouldn't want to do to me if you were like planning something. I don't know. It seems a little strange.
I guess the idea is that by turning it off, it made it hard to notice that the flight was going off course. And some people suggest they were trying to fly in a route where they could avoid detection for some reason, because they have a really weird flight path. So to follow up on what you're saying, flight controllers noticed the unknown blip, but they don't have any serious concern for it quite yet. But meanwhile, a military base in Thailand notices the anonymous blip on the radar and wonders why it's approaching their base, as no covert missions are said to be scheduled at that time, which does become a cause for concern.
That makes sense.
It's like, yeah, whoever the is trying to attack us, they just don't have any cloaking. They're just like clearly visible, like they're gonna get shot down. They probably know this, if they are trying to attack us. So I'm sure there's conflicting, like, what do we do kind of scenarios running through their heads.
Now, from what I know about 9/11 9/11, there were classified missions going on when those flights were hijacked, which aided in the deception supposedly that was going on. Like, they had secret missions planned in that airspace, and so they weren't really sure what they were looking at, and it allowed what happened to happen, supposedly, if you believe the official story. That happens a lot, actually. Like, I guess the UK train bombings that happened not shortly after 9/11, the same thing, where they're like, oh, we're performing these secret, military training exercises, and then when something does go wrong, it makes it hard to like find. Well, in this case, there were no secret missions going on, so they noticed the blip kind of early. So at this point, the Thai military begins to closely monitor this anonymous blip. Between 1:21 a.m. and 1:28 a.m., Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnamese radar noticed the unidentified radar blip beginning to change course. Specifically, a radar station in Thailand reports the unknown object making pretty much a U-turn, reversing course, but nobody knows at first it's Malaysian Flight 370. At 1:30 a.m., the blip suddenly disappears from the aircraft controller radar station in Sabang, Indonesia, appearing to have vanished over the Gulf of Thailand. It's not clear what is happening, but it seems the satellite communication system has also been tampered with, which will become important later. I guess satellites just fly over stuff, and there's like an automatic ping that goes between the two. And for whatever reason, this system was not working correctly, but they can still see from the satellite that a ping was attempted. So they know something was there.
That happened pretty quick. You've got at 1:28 a.m., they start doing this U-turn and reversing course, and then just 2 minutes later it disappears.
All this stuff is happening pretty quick. At 1:37 a.m., the Malaysian military and civilian flight radars pick up the unknown aircraft again, which shows the plane flying southwest over the Malay Peninsula before turning northwest. At this point, aircraft controllers in Malaysia notice that Flight 370's ACAR signal has not been received in the last 30 minutes, which is normal, and they realize that something is wrong. They start putting two and two together and realize that Flight 370 and the unknown object may in fact be the same thing, but they're unable to confirm their suspicion until other agencies are contacted. Investigators have since mentioned that if terrorism or sabotage was the motive, turning off ACARs would be a logical move, because doing so would obscure numerous details about the condition of the craft and what it's doing. 25 minutes before the flight goes missing at 2:15 a.m., the military is still tracking the object, which is flying west, now hundreds of miles off course over the Strait of Malacca. I had trouble Googling this term because it's also, in a different spelling, a Greek word for someone who masturbates too much.
Whoa.
It is spelled different. So at 2:22 a.m., everyone loses tracking as the 370 flies really far in the Andaman Sea. This would be the last time anyone would see the craft on their radar. Despite this, it would still be another 18 minutes before air traffic controllers and the superiors in Malaysia contact the Malaysian Airlines to officially report that Flight 370 is missing. Apparently, they went into damage control and began panicking. At 2:40 a.m., the airlines scrambled to contact anyone who can help them locate the missing flight. At this point, the Malaysian military hands over all their raw data to British and American officials in a desperate attempt to help recover the location of this plane. That's when military planes, ships, and drones are dispatched, but nobody can figure out how a plane would just go utterly missing. An emergency is declared and everyone begins to look sideways at Malaysian Airlines for not reporting it sooner. Preparing for the worst, numerous organizations began analyzing the data in hopes of locating a downed aircraft and any debris associated with. Almost 4 hours after the plane went missing, the airport in Beijing is still showing the flight as a delayed arrival. So all the family members are sitting there like, oh, where's the airplane? So at this point, Malaysian Airlines have not told anyone, and eventually decides to make a Facebook post about it just prior to 8 a.m., sending everyone with family on board into a panic. However, it was at 8:19 a.m. that the missing flight is thought to have pinged an automatic handshake between itself and an overhead Inmarsat satellite, which meant that Flight 370 was still aloft somewhere at this late hour.
What?
Right? So, what was it doing? Was it flying in circles? Was it just flying without any, direction? Nobody really knows for sure.
8:19. Hold on. When did this flight leave? It was
around midnight.
Around midnight? That's 8 hours just flying around.
Just flying around, changing direction, avoiding detection. It's not really clear what happened.
Huh.
They were looking for the new promised land. That's what they were doing. Now, this data was later analyzed by investigators to extrapolate a number of possible locations, but it's like in this big arc, and this arc goes from like way off the west coast of Australia all the way up to Kazakhstan. So they didn't know to look for it on land or an ocean, and they were just like completely lost. I guess this last handshake with the satellite didn't give it like a very precise location. It just knew that it made contact. So besides a small piece of a flaperon, which washed ashore Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean of July 2015, no wreckage, no black box, and no trace of the flight has ever been positively identified.
Huh.
What does this have to do with Men in Black, Tiffany Gomas, and disappearing pennies? Well, on May 19th, 2014, a user known only by the name of Regicide Anon posted what is now thought to be satellite footage of Flight 370, which shows 3 orbs maneuvering in a circular pattern around the airplane before it suddenly, along with the 3 orbs, blinks out of existence entirely.
You shared this video with me, and it's really strange. Like, if this is a fake video, it's a good fake.
Oh, we'll talk about that. Like, if it is fake, what do we know about it being fake? Like, what can we surmise from it? Like, how good of a fake is it? Now, according to internet sleuthers, which are not to be underestimated, the footage is likely from satellite NRO L32, which was launched in 2010, although NRO L22 and 23 are also considered possible, which sort of monitor that area of the world.
So those satellites, are they designated to a specific area to monitor?
Yes, they monitor that part of the ocean and kind of keep track of stuff, I guess. Now, just about this supposed satellite footage, if it is real, it's got to be like the holy grail of UFO footage. Like, it's unbelievable. Then on June 12th, less than a month later, the same user posted another angle of this supposed incident, this time from what appears to be FLIR footage from an MQ-1C loaded with expanded EO/IR payload for quasi-wide area aerial surveillance missions.
What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure IR is infrared,
Yep.
but the other letters, I don't know.
Yes, so it has infrared cameras. Now, people were first like, oh, it can't be this drone because that drone has the camera under the nose and I can clearly see the nose in the footage. But then somebody posted like, oh, this is a special one, the MQ-1C, which has the 2 thermal cameras under the wings. So that's why you see a little bit of the nose. And then once you see this thing, you're like, yeah, that's probably what it was. And so because that ping from the satellite like came so late, long story short, this flight, if it did get zapped out of existence, it happened between like 8 and 9 in the morning. So like the military had a minute to dispatch these things and have them flying around. So it's not inconceivable that one of our drones caught it on camera and could see this thing happening.
Especially if they located it with a satellite.
Yeah, because then it would be the military would have all eyes on, so you'd have anything else in the area would try to locate the object.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, make a sandwich, and then I'm going to agree with you after. The original footage, there's no mention that it specifically is, and there's no way we can prove that the plane in that video is, in fact, MH370. But, and this is assuming that the footage is real, if it's not that plane and it's some other plane that's getting zapped out of existence, I have more questions. You know, this might be a military exercise. And then the internet's like, it's got to be, 370, but it could just be like a unmanned plane that they're training and seeing if they can zap it around the planet safely with potential occupants. That's an interesting experiment. Like, can we have humans on a plane that are Marines or paratroopers or something, and can we portal them around the planet and deploy them in multiple spots?
I see what you're saying, because like it blipped off the radar and then it blipped back onto the radar. So that could itself have been part of an experiment. And then even if it wasn't that, it seems like in this hypothetical situation that like if it was some sort of act of terrorism, that if they located it on a satellite, they would have like the military drones be dispatched to see if they could find more information on it.
Yeah, it's confirmed there's a terrorist hijacking. Well, let's just send our UFO squadron out there and zap them over our base, and we'll land that plane on our base and deal with the occupants, whether they're guilty or innocent of, if you're just a bystander in this experiment or event, it's like, sorry, you were a normal person, but now you're going to live in a fucking government camp because we can't have you out there telling people that we zapped you and we dealt with terrorists with this technology. I mean, I could totally see that as a valid thing.
And the thing that I was kind of getting to is that, like, if that was the case, if it was a terrorist thing, the government wouldn't give that information. It wouldn't be public information until, like, after the fact, like, not to family members. And, like, once it goes into the military's hands, no one else is going to get that information.
Well, considering it being an experiment, it's like, well, if the plane was already nosediving, they might have just used that as an experiment because the people were going to die already. Like, I don't necessarily think these people are still alive.
Yeah, it's possible that if it was hijacked by terrorists, the crew on board was already killed, and this was just a more sophisticated version of shooting the airplane down. They just used their latest and greatest airplanes. That's a cool theory.
Or another theory, like, apparently when Malaysia turned all the information over to the government, they also checked this guy's house, the pilot, and he had a flight simulator installed, right? Apparently the CIA found that there was a flight log a few days before he took that flight that had a path that the flight took. So it might have been premeditated too, as in the pilot might have been in on some kind of scheme to, like, take the airline down ahead of time and was training at home. He deleted that flight path out of his computer, but apparently they used technology forensics to extrapolate some data, and it showed this pretty much the same assumed flight path. It lined up with the, the radar pings as they happened.
Or at least that's what they want us to think.
Yeah, who knows? Because it could have also been doctored, the evidence from the computer.
Yeah. And by the way, there was recently a Netflix documentary on this thing. And anytime Netflix tells you, hey, look at, we did our work. You don't have to look at this anymore because we're telling you exactly what we want you to know. That's what they want you to know. It's like, whatever Netflix is saying, I don't buy it.
Yeah, because psychological evaluation of the captain and his first mate seemed to suggest there was nothing wrong with them. They probably were not spies. They didn't have ulterior motives. They weren't depressed. People who just crash their airplanes full of passengers tend to show warning signs, and they get evaluated, and, like, they had no warning signs. So it's just, but it is weird that he was crashing his simulation into the ocean right before it happened, if that did happen. So here's the deal. If you take these two pieces of footage, the FLIR footage and the aforementioned satellite footage, the two match up seamlessly, even though they're shot at drastically different angles and recording at different frame rates. They both show the same thing, a Boeing 777, which matches Malaysian Flight 370, making a wide arc before three orb-like objects begin rotating around it like Koopa shells in Mario Kart before blinking the aircraft out of existence in a flash of light. That's what it looks like.
It totally does.
Trippy as f***.
Now, shortly after posting this footage, Regicide Anon's internet presence was also wiped from existence after garnering only a few hundred views. According to those who stayed interested in this footage, reposting the material online usually saw it quickly taken down. It was only just now that it resurfaced and began receiving a wide audience, which has had a nearly impossible time proving it to either be legit or a hoax. Although it is safe to assume that if it is a hoax, it's a ridiculously good one. Commentary is made on this specifically by Reddit user ARYELBCN in r/UFO just 7 days ago. The aircraft's disappearance took place on March 8th, and the video in question was first posted on May 19th. The individuals behind the potential hoax had a span of 72 days to develop these videos, if they are a hoax. Their process involved crafting two photorealistic videos depicting the same scenario from distinct viewpoints, each incorporating diverse effects and frames per second. This could be achieved if utilizing a 3D rendered environment. Compiling GPS data and classified satellite insights to ensure alignment with the MH370 flight specifics. They would have had to create a lifelike cloud animation with rendered scenes, a technically challenging task. Unlike common 3D rendering clouds, these clouds exhibit realistic shape changes influenced by wind. So they did an amazing job doing the clouds if they're fake. Capturing the video through filming a screen. If this is a leaked video, this method could be the most plausible because it would avoid being caught trafficking in classified footage, so that makes it more believable. Then they would have had to design software capable of manipulating the mouse pointer to dynamically alter GPS coordinates while panning across the screen, subsequently capturing these changes, which would have been a real pain in the ass and an extra detail. This intricate fabrication process suggests a meticulous endeavor, prompting us to consider its implications with a nuanced perspective. So long story short, if it is a hoax, it is like the most expensive hoax you could possibly imagine. Like they went all out on this hoax. Would have been like experts. So it's a little bit like the Patterson-Gimlin film with the Bigfoot, where it's like, if this is a hoax, they went so far out of their price range, it's just not believable.
Also, production-wise, 72 days is like, that's a fairly quick turnaround. Like, if this is just someone doing it in their free time, like, that's a ridiculous amount of work in a short amount of time to be doing it. And even if it is like a paid project, it's an expensive one that turned around fast.
Yeah, and there's like even subtle details, like not only the clouds or the contrails going after the UFOs and like the spiral motion. Not only that would be hard to render, but did you notice on the infrared one that the balls that were floating around the aircraft, they had a hot side and a cold side.
Yeah.
And the cold side was constantly oriented towards the aircraft. So that detail taken in, what would draw, okay, if you're trying to illustrate UFOs, what do you think of them, like a ball of energy, or they must be really hot because they're bending space-time or whatever. I think if an artist was making it up, the infrared would show the entire ball as being red and not polarized they would look like Pokeballs, actually.
I think it would also be a hell of a lot more work to make it polarized as opposed to all one unanimous temperature.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because then there's another aspect to the 3D movement. Not only is it rotating, orbiting in like multiple directions, but you have to orient the ball. You know, that's a lot of layers of detail.
Well, a lot of experts have weighed in on the footage by this point, and like CGI people are like, oh man, that's some amazing CGI. If that's real, like, I don't think I could do that. And then physics nerds weighed in where they're like, did you notice that, like, yeah, there's a cold side and it's trailing each orb, and then right before it blinks out of existence, a cold field goes around the aircraft, and then boom, it's like this cold section and then a flash of light. And they're like, if this were gravity bending machines of some kind, that's what you would expect to happen, is like this charge of light. And they just go on and on about how if it is a fake, it's brilliantly designed.
And if they zapped it, like, to blow it up, to incinerate the aircraft, there'd be wreckage and fallout that you would be able to see after the fact, and it's nothing. It's just like, you know, those in the old comic strips, like in Batman, where it goes bam or pop or wow. Mm-hmm. It has that like jaggedy, like firecracker look to it. It just like does that for 2 frames on the video, and then there's nothing left.
Gone.
Like absolutely nothing.
Now that this footage is out in the open, people are taking a second look and reconsidering the untimely fate of Malaysian Flight 370. Alongside UFOs become a regular occurrence in the mainstream news cycle, it's no mystery to me why anyone would have sympathy for Tiffany and her skepticism about what or who is real, paired with the possibility of the risk that uncertainty may pose for passengers of a commercial airliner. And just as a coincidence, Tiffany's freakout coincided with the 26th anniversary of the theater release of the original film of the Men in Black trilogy.
Damn, dude.
But if you'd like to hear some of the paranormal stories sent in by listeners and some stories by the hosts, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended edition of this show, but all our shows going back to the before times. I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny cover art at no additional cost to you, and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can talk about this stuff that you can't just talk about with anybody. Recently, Spotify has done an integration thing with Patreon, so like, once you get the Patreon, you could very quickly link it to your Spotify, and then all the extended episodes will be right there conveniently on Spotify, which is great.
Yeah, because Patreon kind of takes a while to load up all the episodes. You have to literally scroll down. So Spotify, its interface is just a lot more seamless and kind of easier to listen to it, in my opinion.
It makes it more convenient, too, if you listen to a bunch of podcasts, just to have it on all like one thing.
So yeah, please check it out. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew.